Let's now get reaction from Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos. He's editor of Politics First magazine. Marcus, what do these latest developments tell us about the state of the Syrian opposition? Just how stable is this coalition?
Well, before I answer that question, I think it's important to clarify for Russia Today's audience exactly who the Syrian opposition is. In reality, there are two opposition movements. There's the foreign-based opposition movement, the Syrian National Coalition, which is backed by the West and by the Islamist regimes of Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Qatar. And then there's the domestic Syrian opposition, which is comprised of about 12 political parties who want political reform, who want political changes, but they want to do so with the Syrian government. And they're completely opposed to foreign intervention in Syria, and they're completely opposed to taking up arms against the Syrian government. So I think it's very important for audiences in the West to realise that when Western media and Western politicians say the Syrian opposition, there's actually two Syrian oppositions. But in answer to your question, what does it say today about Khatib's resignation? Well, it simply shows how divided, how fragmented the Syrian National Coalition is. And that's no surprise, given that it's quite simply a ragtag organisation which is made up of so many different groups and largely occupied by Islamist groups. So I think it's very dangerous for Western powers to actually invest any trust in the Syrian National Coalition, and all the more so, who has actually voted these people in? Certainly the Syrian people, excuse me, certainly the Syrian people haven't voted them in. So they're completely out of touch with the reality on the ground in Syria.
So what you're saying that this coalition, which is in exile, this foreign-based opposition, really it doesn't have much influence or sway over these rebel factions fighting in Syria. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's been the $64,000 question for the last year. Just how much influence do they actually exert over the different militant groups in Syria? It's very, very difficult to tell. I would probably argue that the Islamist factions of the SNC probably exert or have a lot more influence over what's going on in Syria.
So just let me. Are you talking about those groups who are linked to Al Qaeda, for example, the radicals?
Absolutely, Al Qaeda, the Al Nusra Front, and also other Islamist groups. I think, given that the uprising in Syria, it's largely Islamist-based, and given that the SNC and the FSA is largely Islamist-based, I think it's only natural to assume that if any section of the SNC has influence over the militant fighters in Syria, it's going to be the Islamist faction.
And what is their agenda then? What do they want to see?
Well, they've made it very, very clear. They've been very candid. And of course, what they've said has constituted an inconvenient truth for Western politicians and Western journalists. They've made it very clear they want an Islamist system installed in Syria. They want to completely overthrow Syria's current secular pluralist society and replace it with an Islamist system based on Sharia law. And of course, who do they look to? They look to the Islamist regimes of Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Turkey, who are their chief backers and supporters in terms of weapons, cash and logistics.
Marcus, just one brief final question. The US State Secretary, he's told that Iraq is to seize Iranian planes en route to Syria if they are suspected of being loaded with weapons. Is there any proof, actually, that Tehran is arming Damascus? Just briefly.
Well, it's ironic that the US Secretary of State would make that accusation against Iraq. It's very difficult to tell. Who knows? Lots of different things happen in battles. There's lots of different dimensions. But I would say that, as I said earlier, it is ironic, given that Turkey, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are strategic allies of America, have been the ones responsible for the bloodshed in Syria through their support to the Syrian militants in the form of cash, weapons and Islamist fighters. So it's hypocritical for the US Secretary of State to make such a criticism when his own strategic allies are supplying the militants in Syria, and they are the ones who have blood on their hands and who should be in the International Criminal Courts.
Live from London, Dr. Marcus Papadopoulos, editor of Politics First magazine. Thanks very much indeed for your thoughts.
Thank you.